Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at CoreyJoel. That's CorryJoel. And also read my regular CBSSports.com column, Agent's Take on NFL Salary Cap and Contract Matters. We're going to look at two things for this episode. One, the Falcons quarterback situation and what could have been done differently, and also the exploding wide receiver market. The quarterback carousel has kept spinning with Matt Ryan no longer the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. He is now Indianapolis Colt. He was dealt to the Colts for a third-round pick last week. Now, Falcons' situation with him is pretty interesting from this standpoint, that there's $40.525 million in dead money that the Falcons have for Matt Ryan, and that's a salary cap charge for a player no longer on the roster because they had done 4 contract restructures starting in 2017 of the 5-year, $150 million extension he signed in 2018, which made him the first $30 million per year player in the NFL. The crazy thing is, before they entered the pursuit of Deshaun Watson, they were willing to do a 5th restructure where they were going to create $12 million of cap room by taking $15 million of his 2022 salary, add 3 voiding dummy years to it, and kick the can down the road. Then this thing, they never filed that a restructure, held off, and in order to buy more time for the Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan agreed to move his third day of the 2022 league year roster bonus of $7.5 million back 3 days to the 22nd of March, and they guaranteed that roster bonus. Now, we've seen that happen on a couple occasions this year. Also, in Danielle Hunter's case, the roster bonus was moved back a couple of days because the Vikings were contemplating trading him and ultimately converted it into a signing bonus. And I think it was in 2006, Brett Favre moved his roster bonus 4 times that offseason as he was trying to decide whether he was going to continue playing or retiring. Because Matt Ryan's contract was done prior to the current CBA, and it wasn't just a simple contract restructure, they had to add money to his contract so he wouldn't lose the 17th game check he was entitled to for having a contract done before March 2020. So that meant his 2022 and 2023 salaries went from $23.75 million and $28 million to $24,705,882 and $29,205,882. So he went from making $51.75 million to $53,911,764. Now, he would have gotten the 17th game checks as a collectively bargained benefit under the CBA where there wasn't a cap charge had he done nothing. But now there are cap charges related to the 17th game checks. Now, this whole failed pursuit of Deshaun Watson opened the door for trading Matt Ryan this year. And that's how he ends up in Indy. The $40.525 million in dead money is the biggest salary cap charge we've ever had in dead money. It replaces Carson Wentz's $33,820,611 from when the Eagles traded him last year to the Colts. Now, this worked out perfectly from the Colts from being able to accommodate $24.7 million in salary for Matt Ryan because they had Carson Wentz's almost $28.3 million salary come off the books when he got traded to the Commanders. Now, once they got a hold of Matt Ryan, they did a contract restructure for cap purposes. They took $12 million of his basically 24/7 in compensation and turned that into a signing bonus. They folded the roster bonus of $7.5 million into the signing bonus. Created $6 million in cap space, so his new cap number this year, Matt Ryan's in Indy, is $18,705,882. And they guaranteed a salary for this year. His 2023 cap number goes from $29,205,882 to $35,205,882. Now, they broke up the salary into $19,205,888 to $882 into base salary. And there's a $10 million roster bonus guaranteed for injury. Presumably that's the 5th day of March, like Carson Wentz's was. In hindsight, if the Falcons were going to get rid of Matt Ryan this year, which hadn't been the plan before the failed pursuit of Deshaun Watson, maybe Terry Fontenot, the GM, should have gone quarterback last year. Kyle Pitts was great. Looks like he's already put himself in the conversation of the upper echelon tight ends. He's a receiving mismatch. But last year was the time to find your heir apparent to Matt Ryan. You had 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. You had Justin Fields go at number 11 and Mac Jones go at number 15. This year's quarterback crop is not the same as last year's quarterback crop. Quarterbacks always get overdrafted, so there's a chance that with the 8th overall pick, the Falcons use a quarterback, maybe unlike Liberty's Malik Willis. But last year was the year to do that, given how things have shaked out. Now, you either could have stood pat at number 4 and the Niners leapfrog you, and then you're kind of reaching for either Fields or Mac Jones, or let's say hypothetically, you offered up the 4th pick, knowing that maybe you liked Trevor Lawrence you're never going to get, and the Jets were going to take the other quarterback at whoever's number 2, Zach Wilson, and you couldn't get one of those two. Who's to say Atlanta couldn't have done what Miami did in terms of acquiring, making the trade so the 49ers could be in position to take Trey Lance. So maybe it's number 4. If you could have done that, traded with the Niners and moved back to 12, you could have gotten a 2022 and 2023 first-round pick and another pick. There's a 2022 third-round pick, which was also in the swap. Then if you're at 12, you're in a position, if you like Fields, you move back up. We saw Philadelphia move from 12. We saw Miami move from 12 to 6 to get in position for Jalen Waddle. You don't move up that high, but they gave up that trade was a 1st and 5th for a 1st and 4th and a 22nd, 2022 first-round pick to move up 6 spots. So you give up one of those first probably to move up if you really wanted to ensure that you got Justin Fields, or you stand put at number 12 and you let Mac Jones fall to you. Then it becomes, what do you do at that point with Matt Ryan if you had your quarterback for the future? First, I got to think if you're going to trade him, you would get more than you got for Julio Jones. This year you had no leverage once Matt Ryan decided he wanted out, was open to a change of scenery, and you only got the 3rd. Julio Jones essentially went for a 2nd and a 4th. I know there's a swap of other picks. I think a swap of 6, but there's 2nd and 4th is basically what he went for. So presumably you would have gotten at least that from Matt Ryan had you traded him last year. Then it becomes, I guess the options would be you'd have Mac Jones sit for a year behind Matt Ryan, then you move him this year, but you'd have your quarterback in the future already set, or do you try to trade him? And that would have created another problem, another issue, is the dead money, even if you didn't do that. And I'm presuming you don't do the last restructure you did last year if you're going to potentially move on from Matt Ryan, you find another way to get the cap room that was created. I think it was $15 million of cap space that was created in that restructure. Maybe you do Grady Jarrett, you restructure him. No, they got $14 million in cap space. I was just looking that up. They got $14 million in cap space last year. So maybe you try to get it from Grady Jarrett or someplace else, and Matt Ryan, and you keep his cap number intact. It was $40,912,500 before you did anything last year. But you were going to have $44,437,500 of dead money. Taking that in 1 year would have been tough. So if you could have convinced a team like, say, Denver, that you were to make the trade and not Teddy Bridgewater, but hold off until June 2nd and process it, kind of like they did with Julio Jones, where they wanted to split the cap hit over 2 years, so they didn't trade Julio before June 2nd. Because starting on June 2nd, bonus proration from future contract years does not hit the cap in the current year. It's delayed till the next league year. So if you could have done that, then you only would have had $17,912,750 of dead money for Matt Ryan, and you'd have $26.525 of dead money this year associated with him, and you would have had his entire 2021 salary of $23 million coming off the books. So you would have picked up $23 million of cap space in 2021. But now, in the new team, Denver, whomever would have been getting Matt Ryan for $74.75 million over 3 years. Or maybe you're not afraid to trade him within the division, but you'd have to probably eat the full dead money now, and maybe you ship him to Carolina. You'd increase your cap hit $3.525 million in 2021, have him off the books for 2022, and Carolina gets Matt Ryan, and you'd have to face him potentially. But that wasn't a concern when Buffalo traded Drew Brees, because they're going with Tom Brady after they won their first Super Bowl in the 2001 season. Trade him to the Bills. And we saw that Donovan McNabb was traded in the division, went to the Washington Commanders. So now you're kind of faced with, in Atlanta, do we go quarterback this year? Or do we ride it out, go with Marcus Mariota this year, who was signed to a 2-year, $18.75 million contract with $6.75 million fully guaranteed. Salary breaks down to $6.75 million in 2022, $12 million next year. Of the $3 million of the $12 million is a fifth-day roster bonus. So this is really his chance to kind of audition and put himself in position to be a starting quarterback long term, or he's going to be that bridge guy someplace else if teams aren't comfortable, or maybe he's destined to be a backup. We'll see. But if things go south, then maybe you're in a position for Alabama's Bryce Young or Ohio State's C.J. Stroud next year. But in any event, I don't think anybody, at least from the fan base, was contemplating the Atlanta Falcons, one, not having Matt Ryan on the roster this year after the restructures they did, and then the reversal change of course with Deshaun Watson kind of set all this in motion. And the fact that you were willing to do a fifth contract restructure kind of from the outside looking in makes you kind of wonder what's going on with Atlanta. Now, if you're able to pull off the Watson trade, putting these sexual misconduct assault issues aside, you've got your quarterback for the future, for I don't know, the next however many years. And trading Matt Ryan, just from a pure football standpoint, would have been justified. But we'll see what the Falcons do with the 8th overall pick. If they don't take a quarterback there, maybe they take one second round, third round. Or do they just kind of address other needs? One in particular is wide receiver. because there's nobody really to throw the ball to except Kyle Pitts at this point. And the quarterback for the future will be addressed in 2023. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver market. We now have multiple receivers hitting the $20 million per year mark. That market has changed dramatically since the end of the 2021 season. You had 4 wide receivers at $20 million per year. Amari Cooper at $20 million. Keenan Allen at $20.025 million as an average. Julio Jones at $22 million. And DeAndre Hopkins, whose new money is $27.25 million. And no, part of the reasons Devonta Adams couldn't get a deal done with the Packers last year is the Packers didn't want to acknowledge that DeAndre Hopkins deal. To me, the telltale sign that they're talking over new money is he had $39.915 million left on his contract for the 3 years. The total of the 5 years is, I think it's $94.415 million, which means they were talking about new money. I'd imagine that Hopkins wanted it ripped up, wanted to top Julio Jones, and say wanted $112.5 million over 5 years. They backed out what he had left, and they're like, we're not paying you like $38 million a year in new money on an extension. Same thing you'll see if Aaron Donald, who's negotiating with the Rams, that I doubt they're going to rip it up and give him $150 million over 5 years. That it might be a 2-year extension or something, maybe at $60 million over 2, so that's $30 million per year, something like that. But anyway, now you've got 8 guys making $20 million per year or more, and that includes the Titans cutting Julio Jones, so he's no longer in the equation. Now, people like to point to Christian Kirk's deal as being a catalyst for the receiver market really escalating. Yeah, what he doesn't help, but there's already a deal in the marketplace that ensured people were going to be gunning for $20 million per year. To avoid having to make a decision about a franchise tag for $18.816 million on Mike Williams, the Chargers signed him to a 3-year, $60 million deal, $40 million fully guaranteed, averaging $20 million per year, when he is at best 1B for the Chargers, and maybe the second option behind Keenan Allen. Chargers the only team that have 2 $20 million per year receivers, and they're really loading up to try to take advantage of the last part of the window when Justin Herbert's going to be as cheap as possible. Williams had a career year, 76 catches, 1,146 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. That deal in and of itself probably ensured that the guys in the 2019 draft class are going to be looking for at least $20 million per year. Now, what Christian Kirk did, $72 million over 4 years, $37 million fully guaranteed. Deal maxes out at $21 million per year because he's got $12 million worth of incentives each year. This is a guy who'd never been a 1,000-yard receiver. 72 catches, 997 yards, 5 touchdowns was his career year last year of Arizona. When DeAndre Hopkins got hurt, he did not start putting up huge numbers like he's the number 1 receiver. You saw more of an uptick in the production of Zach Ertz, the tight end. In Jacksonville, he's a huge upgrade. But this deal in and of itself, you're going to see receivers go, wait a minute. If he's at 18, for what he's done, I got to be way above 20. So it does factor into that from that equation. It's going to have more of a direct bearing on any negotiation with Hunter Renfro, another slot receiver, with the Raiders. Hunter Renfro, 103 catches, 1,038 yards, 9 touchdowns. I want to see the Raiders try to justify Hunter Henry in his representation why he should be making less than Christian Kirk. But there is one of the 8 guys who are above $20 million where I see that it had a direct impact. That Carolina Panthers signed a DJ Moore to a 3-year extension. Now, over the 4 years, which included his fifth-year option, he's making 73 over the 4 years. So I'm pretty sure the agent was like, you know what, Christian Kirk's making 72 over the next 4. I can't make less than Christian Kirk over the next 4. You back out the option, and you get a 3-year extension at $20.628 million. So you're going to see that factor in the equation as well. Like maybe that's the new floor. Now, you've had two guys take the market to a different level on paper. First, you had Devonta Adams when he was franchised by the Packers, get traded for a first and second round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. And he signs a deal that on paper is base value $140 million over 5 years. That's $28 million per year. But you got to look at the structure of the contract. And this is a contract which is more form over substance. And when I was an agent, I didn't care about putting inflated years at the end of a deal. I cared more about the substance of the deal. To each his own. This is kind of ego gratification, bragging rights for Adams. But he's got $67.5 million in the first 3 years, $22.5 a year. That's the real value of the year deal. He's got $72.5 million in the last 2 years, $36.25 million in each of 25 and 2026. He's going to turn 30 near the end of this football season. So we're talking when a season where he's going to be playing 33 and 34. He's never going to make that type of money in those years. They'll cut him or they'll have to take a pay cut. They'll rework the deal. So I look at this as really $67.5 million over 3 years. And I'm sure teams around the NFL are going to look at it that way. $22.5 million per year. Now, let's go to Tyreek Hill's case. That the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill had been talking extension. And then this Devonta Adams deal kind of threw a monkey wrench into that whole equation. And next thing you know, last week, Tyreek Hill has the option to be traded to the New York Jets, or he can go to the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins gave up 5 picks for him. 2022 first, second, fourth round picks, as well as 2023 fourth and sixth round picks. He signs a 4-year extension for $120 million. $72.2 million in guarantees and $52.35 million fully guaranteed. So I call this a 3-year extension at $25 million per year because he has $45 million in the 2026 contract year. Now, this is his second big extension, and we are not going to see Tyreek Hill playing in 2026 for $45 million. So that's another one of these cases where he can technically say he's the first $30 million per year non-quarterback, but realistically it's $75 million over 3 years. So still, nonetheless, now you've got 8 guys: Tyreek Hill, Devonta Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Mike Williams, and also Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin was franchised for a second time in Tampa and tore the ACL and MCL on his right knee late in the season, but he signed a 3-year, $60 million deal with $40 million fully guaranteed to stay with Tampa. So those are your guys, your 8 guys who are now in the $20 million per year club. That club is going to expand by the start of the 2022 regular season because of the 2019 draft class. And you've got 2019 receivers drafted in the second round: DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Debo Samuel. Also, third-round pick Terry McLaurin. Now, the interesting thing is one person is going to have a lot of say in what happens in the receiver market, and that's Tory Dandy, the agent. Tory Dandy has done 2 of these deals so far: Mike Williams and Chris Godwin. He's done 2 of the deals this offseason. Also represents Brown, Samuel, and Metcalf. Now, if I'm Terry McLaurin, I'm a guy who's averaged 74 catches, 1,030 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, average season in my 3 years. And I haven't had a great quarterback to play with. Carson Wentz should be the best quarterback he's had. Anything below DJ Moore, and I'm not interested, so I'm talking $21 million. And then for these guys, something else they should be looking at is, and this is what I used to do as an agent. If I played out my contract and I'm someone that I thought might be franchise tag worthy, what would that number be? And then I'd start playing the franchise tag game and using that as a guide. So this year, the wide receiver franchise tag number is $18.419 million. Now, conservatively, I've gotten from teams are using between 225 and 230 from a couple of teams for the 2023 cap. And their cap planning has to be on the conservative side. Based on that, I'm going to ballpark the 2023 wide receiver franchise tag at $20 million. So let's say it's $20 million. You stick a second tag at 20% raise, then you're at 24. The average of 2 tags is 22. So I'm not doing a deal under 22 if I'm any of these guys. McLaurin, Metcalf, Brown, Samuel. I'm not doing a deal for under 22 million. And then what's going to happen is whoever goes first out of these 4 is probably going to get leapfrogged by the other 3. The Titans have come out and said they're committed to A.J. Brown long term, trying to get something done. I would be reluctant to pay him that for one reason. We don't throw the football. That's a run-oriented offense. You got Derrick Henry. So do you really need a $22 million per year receiver in that offense? Well, if I'm the agent, I'm like, yeah, you do. That's the going rate. If you want him, pay the going rate. If you don't, trade him to the Jets. We know the Jets would probably be willing to pay $25 million for a guy. They were in the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes. Speaking of guys who could get traded, or at least speculation, the Seattle says they're not rebuilding, they're reloading. But when you trade Russell Wilson, you cut Bobby Wagner, you say Drew Lock potentially could be your starting quarterback, you're rebuilding. You're not going anywhere unless Drew Lock is your quarterback, unless he plays above the second round pick that was used to take him. You're the worst team in that division. So there's been speculation that given the way the receiver market is going, that DK Metcalf could be moved. Metcalf set a franchise record for receiving yards in 2020 with 1,303. Great size, great speed. Those types of guys get paid a premium. You have to be comfortable paying DK Metcalf in this range or more, or Seattle could look to move him before the draft. That's what the speculation is. Now, the most interesting case out of these guys is Debo Samuel, because Debo Samuel had a breakout 2021 season, led the NFL 18.2 yards per catch, 77 catches, 1,405 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, first team All-Pro. But when they had injuries in the backfield, they moved him to running back. He averaged 6.3 yards per carry, 365 yards on 59 carries, 8 touchdowns, was third in yards from scrimmage with 1,170. He calls himself a wide back. Now, to me, he may be the most dangerous offensive weapon in the NFL. And if I'm trying to distinguish Debo Samuel from everyone else, because you get added value from him, not only looking like he could be one of the best running backs in the league, but one of the best receivers as well. So you got a weapon, a dimension the other guys don't have. So you'd have to pay a premium for that. There's been some talk, well, they could play him in enough snaps in 2023 if he doesn't get a new contract that the running back franchise tag would come into play. But if you look at the snap count from last year, even when he started playing more running back, it was predominantly a wide receiver. 826 total offensive snaps according to Pro Football Focus, 80 at running back, 1 at tight end in line, 745 as a receiver, 209 in the slot, 536 wide. So they'd have to dramatically change how he's used for a franchise tag position dispute to even come into play if he played out his contract. But for him, I'm thinking north of 25, the Tyreek Hill number, because of the added value of what you can do with him. But floor's still 22. And this is a situation where the Niners can afford him at that price because of quarterback situation. Jimmy Garoppolo is not the quarterback for the future. Trey Lance is. So they're going to have a cost-contained, cheap quarterback. You're going to have Nick Bosa probably at $30 million per year. You've already got George Kittle, highest paid tight end, at $15 million per year. Fred Warner, in terms of off-ball linebackers, he's slightly over 19. That's second to Darius Leonard for now. So you can handle Debo Samuel going over the Tyreek Hill $75 million over 3 mark if you had to. With all these guys, if they start getting done on a quick basis, you have a couple of guys who have multiple years on their contract that aren't going to be happy because of the way they're performing. One, let's look at the Rams. If they're going to do Aaron Donald with 3 years left, how can they not reward Cooper Kupp with 2 years left on his contract? In 2020, he signed a 3-year extension, $47.25 million over 3 years, averaging $15.75 million per year. Deal maxes out at $48.375 million. Won the Triple Crown in receiving last year, which hadn't been done like 15 years by Steve Smith. 145 catches, over 1,900 receiving yards, 16 touchdowns. He's under contract for $29.5 million over the next 2 years, $14.875 million and $14.625 million. So you're probably going to have to put him near the top of the market. And by top of the market, I don't mean the $30 million for Tyreek Hill and the $28 million for Devonta Adams. I'm thinking DeAndre Hopkins, from what is earnable, is still the top at 27 point. Then there's Stefan Diggs. Brandon Bean, the GM for the Bills, could be digging himself a hole by saying Diggs has 2 years left. We don't have to do anything for his contract. Well, Cooper Kupp gets done with 2 years left. Then you may have to address him sooner rather than later. He only led the NFL in catches and receiving yards this first year there in 2020. He's got 2 years left on his contract as well for a shade over $27.25 million. Supposed to make a little over $13.5 this year and a little under $13.7 next year. So you could have a problem with him as well, particularly if you get Kupp done, who has 2 years left. He signed a 5-year, Diggs signed a 5-year, $72 million extension. That's the base value in 2018 with the Vikings. So he's got more of a gripe than Kupp from being under contract longer, and the market has changed significantly since then. Then one other veteran that probably won't happen this year, but next year, keep an eye on Mike Evans. Excuse me, 5-year, $82.5 million contract in 2018. He's the go-to restructure guy. He's got $28.5 million left over the next 2 years, $14 million and $14.5 million. 2023 cap number of 23, almost 23.7 because of the restructures. Most 1,000-yard seasons, consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. He's at 8 for 8 so far. So receiver market's going to continue to go up. So this will be one of the most fascinating markets to watch this offseason. But that's going to be it for this week's Inside the Cap. Don't forget you can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That's CORRYJOEL. Also read my regular CBSSports.com column, Agents Take. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next time, and goodbye.